So we have Karen Briscoe. Did I pronounce that right, Karen?
Correct. Yes.
Well, I appreciate you being on the call here today and joining us on the podcast. But I really wanted to talk to you about some of your concepts and some of the many books you've written. But why don't we start things off with you introducing yourself a little bit, and we'll go from there.
Well, thank you for having me on the House Dudes, because I think that that's a great topic in my world is real estate and investing. And I am a mega real estate agent in the Northern Virginia, Metro Washington, D.C. area. So just think Amazon HQ2 and you've just found my market. And I have been in residential since 2002, achieved success at a pretty high level pretty quickly and caught the attention of a top producer. She was actually number 10 in the nation at the time. And so I became her partner in 2006. And then in 2008, sadly, she passed away the same month the financial markets crashed. So I had the opportunity to rebuild, and I am resilient. I set about doing that, brought in my business partner in 2009, Lizzie Conroy. And in the process of rebuilding, many people said, well, how did you do it? I mean, first of all, how did you become successful quickly? Then, taking over a mega agent's business, and then living through the crash, and then recovering from that, and then going on to thrive. How did you do it? That was a question so I would tell stories, and, stories have a way of being more sticky than information that's just heavy, perhaps sometimes, or a little more boring. And then inspiration along the same lines is beneficial, but sometimes doesn't have enough substance to it. So this combination of these stories, it's information, inspiration, and I've been writing a blog since 2009, and that led to many people say I should write a book. There are a lot of real estate books out there, programs, as you are fully aware of.
Oh yeah.
What I wanted to do was something unique. And the one thing that kept coming back to me is when I would talk to people about their personal business development and their investing and their success, is they all said they didn't have enough time. That was like the common denominator. Everybody was too busy. And so I said, well, do you have 5 minutes a day? And everybody has 5 minutes a day. And that led to this idea of real estate success in 5 minutes a day. So that was the first book. And it's designed as a daily reader, which is very common in inspirational literature and for a long period of time, but really first time to use it in a instructional, informational type industry as well. And so it really caught on because people did have 5 minutes, and they found actually by reading about and then implementing one concept a day, you're more likely to remember it. You're more likely to be able to put it in practice when you do it, because information heavy seminars or books or any kind of instruction, sometimes you just kind of leave in a fog and you don't do anything, right? So the impact of that, and then it has its core components, which is what led to the second book, and that's the Commit to Get Leads 66-Day Challenge. And both of those led to the podcast, the 5 Minute Success Podcast.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I find it interesting that you talk about having to, you writing in some sort of story form, like some of those books that really stand out for me that have always hit home. We can always go to Rich Dad Poor Dad is written in that way.
Yes.
The Traveler's Gift. I can't say enough about that book, and they all have that story element. Those are always the ones that that are attracted to. I find it really interesting that when you say you started asking, like, do you have 5 minutes, and you wrote this first book in that with that mindset. Was that hard to do? And what kind of lessons did you incorporate early on? And the third and follow-up on that is, I always find it, like you said, I like the concept of small pieces and trying to get people to implement things right off the bat. Like, how important is that piece as well?
Oh my goodness, there's lots to unpack here.
Yeah,
So
right.
the one thing I discovered about salespeople and entrepreneurs, and they tend to have this phenomenon called shiny object squirrel syndrome.
Yep.
They're always off to the next thing, right? I
Right.
mean, they don't
Yep.
really
Yep.
spend enough time actually getting deep into a subject. So I wanted to tap into that because that also can be a positive trait in the sense that the new thing is going to get a little more attention and you're going to put focus on it. And so every day in the Real Estate Success in 5 Minutes a Day is different. So it's designed as a daily reader, and you can to follow the calendar. And because a lot of real estate does tend to follow, a calendar, like the spring market and different
Mm-hmm.
seasons and that kind of thing. So the stories are going to be relevant for those times of the year for most people. But I did also find that there are core lessons
Mm-hmm.
that are true. Really what I found is they're pretty universally true. And those 4 core aspects are interspersed throughout.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one being commit to get leads.
Sure.
Until you have a lead, a customer, a client, a potential investment, you don't really have anything to do. So it's a commitment, because it's not I think I feel like it today and I don't feel like it tomorrow. To really sustain success, it really requires a commitment to getting the leads. So
Mm-hmm.
there's stories that have universal truths inside of this business development, prospecting, lead generation component of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one is consult to sell, because to create any type of business, you have to have a transaction that occurs. A customer, a client, a prospect, a deal has to be done, because at some point there needs to be, in business, money transfers. And but also I've discovered nonprofits do this too. They just call it something different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does some sort of service or sells a product in order for business to take place.
Sure.
And so that is consult to sell. So there's principles and lessons, if you will, on that interspersed through the book. And then there's connect, to build, and grow. What happens with many salespeople, entrepreneurs, is they get on a hamster wheel, if you will, and they become very transactional in nature. When they stop working, then they stop working, right? The whole thing eventually, that's why a lot of people live on, kind of a roller coaster life. So they're only as good as their next deal. They ride the deal and they get the high of it, and then they go back down and start all over again. So connect, to build, and grow is systems, it's leverage, it's scale, it's creating an ongoing sustainable enterprise to get off of that hamster wheel, to get off that roller coaster. So that's a key component of all business, really. And then the next one, or the one that encompasses them all, is what I call success thinking, activities, and vision. And it really is all 3, because if you think you just have thinking, affirmations or whatever, I mean, you don't do anything. At some point, it's just all in your mind, right? If you have vision, but you don't think about how to implement, and you don't put the activities in place, the vision will more likely just be a pipe dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have a lot of action going on, but they don't have any direction. They don't have any vision. So that could, you could be running in place. So it really requires all 3. Most people create a vision as an investor, or they're planning for their business or their life, and then they think about how to do it, which is planning. But then there's the actual doing it, because sometimes people have a vision and they'll have the thinking, but they don't put anything into place. So they just think it's going to happen by osmosis, I guess. There's some people out there that say it does, manifesting it, but I find that it requires action, right? It requires actually calling people, finding deals, doing deals, getting them in the pipeline. All requires action. So the book is a compilation of all those concepts, but dispersed in this individual small pieces. So why small pieces? there's been a lot of research about habit formation and how people learn and integrate. And the benefit of small is, first of all, you start small and you can build from it.
Right.
You try to start big and you don't have anything, the fundamentals of even just this construction of a house, right? You don't like build the house, you build the building blocks to build the house, right? The components.
Right.
So the same thing applies in building a core knowledge, skills and abilities in sales or business or whatever endeavor you're in. Parkinson's law states that restricting and limiting time actually can make people more efficient or effective. I'm sure you've had this phenomenon, or your audience has, or your community, that right before you get ready to leave on vacation, you are a very productive person. Would you agree? Right.
Oh, yeah.
So you've limited and restricted time, and you've said, this is what's got to get done between now and then. And you've learned to delegate or to delete or to, not kick the can down the road and do it at a later point. Right. You will do that. So this builds that in, that innate, because people, if they think, oh my gosh, I've got to read the whole book, oftentimes that tsunami of potential information is so overwhelming that many people don't do anything, right? So this breaks down that barrier too. It's the same phenomenon that people that are wanting to start an exercise program, you leave the shoes out, you have the exercise, all your clothes ready to go. You're stumbling over it when you get up in the morning, you're more likely to put them on and do it, right? So you want to knock over that first domino, and then that has that impact. So the small is important.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about analysis paralysis, and it sounds like you're really talking about ways to overcome that, because frankly, we host quite a few real estate meetups and talks and get-togethers, and we do see quite a few people that come month after month after month to these things, and it's a year in and they've yet to take any noticeable action. They're still accumulating content or accumulating data. In fact, I'd almost call them data hoarders. They're just there to consume more information for the right time to take that action. What would you say to people who are waiting for just that right moment?
Well, in terms of investing in real estate, I'm sure you've heard the proverb, when was the best time to plant a tree?
Yeah.
20 years ago, or the next best time is now. That is some urgency right there. Many people succumb to this data analysis. They're waiting for the perfect moment. They're waiting for the perfect opportunity, the perfect deal, whatever. Well, there really is no perfect. The way I break it down is, in some ways, like the whole tree analogy, right? I look at my future self and I say, future self, will you be glad you did this or regret that you did this, or that you didn't do it, right? I look to the future as whatever level I want to project out. And then I look to the past and I look for evidence that the decision has been valid in other situations. You may not have an exact situation, but that's what comparables are, right? Or any kind of valuation model or whatever. You're looking for that. And then I use those two to help me make a decision whether this is something to act on now.
Right.
If somebody keeps doing it over and over again, that's the definition of insanity or stupidity, or right? That's where they're their own, probably they're the ones that are stopping themselves.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. You can't really convince people to do it. They have to make their own decision. But in the end, it's always been a curiosity to me as to what what trigger would cause somebody to finally take that action?
Well, there's been a lot of research, but the one that comes to mind is the author of the book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying.
Mm,
And that is one of the regrets, is that you didn't do in your life what you wish you would have done.
mm-hmm.
And so that is, to project, will you later regret it? Now, there are situations where people have regret real estate purchases, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people who bought high at the top of the market in our market area, which would have been 04, 05. I wish they'd bought it, 08 or 9. And so I'm not saying that it's 100%. And I think that there is some, in this current market environment, at least in the metro DC area, there is some thought that market is peaking again,
Mm-hmm.
and that people still have that muscle memory, if you will, of the last run up and then subsequent crash. And I think that is one thing I see that stops people.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some data that's beneficial. So
Yeah.
I do believe in data analysis. What you're talking about is analysis paralysis.
Right.
So looking at the differences in the market cycles to see if it really truly is a similar phenomenon that's happening, or whether it could behave differently. A lot of it depends on what type real estate, and there's so many factors. But if you're looking at the fact that this is what most investors would consider a good investment, and there's some people that don't do it, I would say that's probably going to be always the case.
Sure. Well, let's go a little bit into your list of things. Number one, commit to get leads. This is one of those things that I think is the way you worded that is really interesting, because I think when people commit to take some kind of action, they get caught up in doing, I almost call it the romanticizing the grind, that they need to, as long as they're busy with something, at least they
That
feel
counts.
busy. Yeah, at least they
Yeah.
feel busy. So let's talk about that a little bit. Commit to get leads. What do you mean by that? How?
Well, first of all, it's a decision, a commitment, a decision, rather
Right.
than I think it would be a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what I see a lot of people are like, yeah, when I get around to it, when I have time. I'm like, yeah, you're not going to have time. You have to decide that this is part of because that's what often, even when people are successful, one of the number one downfalls of successful people is they get too busy to do the core.
Mm-hmm.
And the core is business development, ongoing, because that's what's going to get off the roller coaster. If you constantly have in your pipeline, then you'll be more likely to have an even output, because that's what you can control. You can
Mm-hmm.
control your input. You cannot necessarily control the output, because the market forces or factors
Right.
will fluctuate that. And one of the strategies that I've used to success, and many people I know since I've shared it with them, I found many successful people use this well, is activity tracking or blocking rather than time.
Mm-hmm.
Because time is a created thing. And what I find is that many people, what you were talking about, busy,
Mm-hmm.
they're busy doing a lot of things, but they're not necessarily doing the activities that will
Right.
lead to business.
Right.
And that came out of our daughter when she was in early elementary and middle school. She had some learning disabilities, and we would take her to tutors, and she had brilliant strategies on how to use up that hour
Mm-hmm.
and not actually get anything done.
Right.
And I would pick her up and I'd go, okay, you got your homework done? Nope. I'm like, what are we doing? So when
Mm-hmm.
people say, oh yeah, I spent 2 hours lead generating, I'm like, show me the money, show me the leads. I want to
Right.
see.
Right.
So I'm a firm believer in tracking. And tracking offers a lot of benefits over time blocking. One
Mm-hmm.
is you have numbers that you can actually keep track of. and you can do your conversions, and you can determine what level of activity, in order to achieve the results you want, it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, I work basically on a weekly basis, although I do chunk it down to daily number of activities based on working days. So I factor in holidays and travel and training and events that I'm at, and then I back in what that means on a working day, how many activities I need to do. And then I keep doing it until I've done those activities. So I could finish, maybe if I'm really effective and efficient, in an hour, but somebody else takes them 2 or 3 hours. I have many more years in it, so I am more effective and efficient than most people. But the thing is that I then am focused on what works rather than figure out how to use up the time with busy work.
Yeah, right. No, and I think that's really important. And when we first started, we did exactly that. You know, we defined what we needed to accomplish, and then define those, actually create a list of those actual activities that would drive towards the financial outcome. And if we were going to have to design our next business card, it better be after hours. It's not during the prime time, because next thing you know, you're designing your next website, or you're designing a logo or something.
Oh, man.
And the next thing you know,
Rabbit
you
hole.
blow your day. So one thing that I think is also interesting, you said previously, is when you make that commitment to keep it up and to do that on a consistent and regular basis, because what I have noticed too is that some people, they will make that commitment, or they see it as a commitment. They start to go down this leads, and then they get the fish on the hook, and now that is their focus, and they forget to do any of the activities that led up to that. So it's this constant having to throw that line out in the water, right? You have to, that activity can't stop just because you might have found something. And then they get disappointed when the deal falls apart or something.
Yeah, they don't have anything else. Yeah,
right.
They get really invested.
That activity has got to be on a constant, regular basis.
And, you know, some people are like, they're not very good jugglers, right?
Right.
Or task switchers, or whatever it is that they are attempting to do. This is where you can learn skills in either delegating or deleting. You will become effective and efficient in the things that are going to benefit you. Then put your energy into that, right?
Right.
So that is what I find, what is the stopping lead generating is the thing that I see hurts more businesses, more entrepreneurs, more investors, more salespeople. So it is a skill and its ability, and it can be learned, but it has to be intentional. And that's why the commitment has to come first.
Sure. So let's go to the next one, consult to sell. Can you kind of go a little bit into detail on what you mean by that?
So some people look at this process as conversion, which is a common term in sales. And that is where you're taking a prospect or a deal or whatever, and you're turning it into business. I chose the word consult because the one thing I found is that converting people sometimes could backfire, if you will, because they may not have been fully consulted. And so then there's, buyer's remorse, or the deal falls through because you left out, a key aspect to it. Consulting is a mindset. It's a perspective that you are there to be the intermediary or the person that makes it happen. And you're not actually doing it. So it's not like you're doing it to the deal or to the person. You're creating the environment, and you're putting the the people, the whatever is in place to make it happen. If it doesn't happen, if the deal doesn't happen, then the best thing I found is to release it to the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it finds a way back, but sometimes it also means that you've been putting a lot of energy. You've heard of this, where people work really hard to force a deal, or that oftentimes that backfires.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I like consulting better than converting. I think that it has the mindset to put in into the situation, the transaction, the deal, whatever it is, that you're there to make whatever needs the environment to create the environment.
Right.
But you're not going to make it happen.
Sure. Okay. So I think that is a lot, we definitely see that quite a bit. Like, and I think it's interesting the way you're saying basically be a consultant instead of a salesperson, because when you're in these situations and you're talking to, let's face fact, I'm talking to a lot of distressed sellers. The worst thing you could do is become hardcore sales in those situations, because they're in a bad situation. They know.
Yeah, what you resist. Yeah, they feel that. They really do. And that's one of it kind of goes back to the commit to get leads. If you're constantly lead generating and doing business development prospecting, you're going to be less desperate yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that comes across to people. They
Sure.
feel that. And so they go together.
Mm-hmm.
But the really in any situation, but I will say that in a distress situation, when they feel that persist, and I'm a very persistent person, but there is a time, I think it reminds me of that old country western song, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. It's something you can learn, because I can't say that I was good at the beginning, but the more I'm probably at 1,500 transactions, and the more I recognize the fact that when there's just a lot of resistance, and it's sometimes it's best for me to release and step back and become a consultant.
Sure. So connect, build, and grow is your next one.
So there are systems, right? And scale and leverage, so much available. When sales people or investors or whatever are getting stuck in the weeds,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is a classic working in their business. The connect, to build, and grow is to working on the business.
Right.
So to go beyond only as good as your next deal requires not reinventing the wheel over and over again.
Right.
And some of that is leverage. It's from listening to podcasts and reading books and talking to other people that have gone before.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it's the leverage. That's a leverage of knowledge. There's leverage of systems, putting into practice just even simple things like, I have a email form kind of letter, if you will, that I personalize for each situation, but for all the different aspects of the transaction. So I don't like rewrite the email every time, right? I take the components and I personalize it for the situation. There's so many things like that. So the idea of connect, build, and grow is to think about how you can put energy into, instead of just reinventing the wheel over and over again, put energy into setting up these systems in place, the scale and the leverage, so that then you can do higher order activities, like lead generation, business development, prospecting, and doing deals. Because, and that may mean delegating, or it may mean deleting, or it may mean finding other ways and people to do it. And when I say people, sometimes people think, employees or staff or virtual assistant. It could also be allied resources. There are people that are in the industry that you can rely on as leverage. So there's lots of ways to think about leverage, but it's
Sure.
to think about how to work on the business and always be doing that. Because I think I heard in one of your podcasts about how, like, for example, technology is always changing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So whether you do anything or not, the world is going to evolve and change.
Right.
So be proactive about it
Mm-hmm.
and always be, I use the Wayne Gretzky quote, he skates to where the puck is going.
Right.
I'm always looking to skate to where the market is going, skate to where new systems, leverage opportunities are going, so that I'm always there, at least for sure when it arrives. I mean,
Right.
instead of like trying to skate to it after it's already happened, right?
Right.
So that's what Connect to Build and Grow is.
Sure. Sure. And then you said it all ties together with your last one, was the success thinking, activities, and vision. And I actually think that that is one of the biggest activities that people really need to do is not only decide what their vision is, but to take a moment and write it down. Like,
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's been proven the most successful people that have been studied are they take as much time to think about it as they do to do it.
mm-hmm.
And if you think about it in terms of as an entrepreneur or investor, your business opportunity is only going to grow to your capacity.
Right.
So if you increase your own capacity, then you already created a more abundant opportunity zone.
Right. Right.
So it really, that's the reason why it encompasses it. It's not a separate activity.
Right.
Successing activities and vision is integral.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found, I spent many years and resources on business coaching and masterminds, and I still do that. But where I really made major leaps and transformations is when I started working on myself and investing in myself. And Warren Buffett, so what, the ultimate investor, he said that yourself, you are the greatest investment you have. Because if you think about it, your ability to create value and to build wealth is your greatest asset.
Mm-hmm.
So investing in yourself is your best investment.
Yep. No, I can't agree more. And I'm sure people get tired of hearing me say it, but if you don't write it down, it's always been, it's a dream. As soon as you do, it becomes a target, and you need to adapt accordingly. I really enjoyed our conversation here today, and I have a feeling we could chat all afternoon, but I can't recommend your podcast enough. So where can they find you, tune you in, and find your books?
So everything is the number 5-minute success. So that makes it easy to remember. The 5-minute success podcast, I came about because I was on a lot of other people's podcasts, real estate, success oriented, that type of platforms, that I found that the conversation was really true for almost every business and entrepreneurship and even nonprofits. And so the 5-minute success is conversations with people in all different coaches, authors, as well as real estate, which is the primary focus. And then the website is the number 5-minute success, same with Facebook and LinkedIn and all of those sites, social media. And the books are all available on Amazon, of course. And have anybody who needs quantity, just tell them to reach out to me. I'm pretty Googleable.
Googleable.
Well, isn't that a verb now, to Google?
Yeah. That's awesome. So thanks again. It was great chatting with you, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yes. And here's to your success.